Hey everybody, welcome to Trading Capital's exclusive analysis. In today's video, we're discussing natural gas and maybe a couple other stocks at the end of this video, but primarily looking at the daily chart. Our members today were able to profit tremendously and handsomely through our KOLD short. So really, since we've been discussing nat gas in this parabolic move, we were worried about a very, very sharp pullback due to the fact that this was a massive extension move. It went absolutely parabolic. We were discussing this 2.5 standard deviation band that we had lined up here, this Bollinger Band, and we were looking at this move where nat gas kept on grinding along this upper Bollinger Band for frankly too long of a period before you needed some sort of a big pullback. And that's what we've gotten. I mean, since this high pivot around that 313, nat gas has pulled back 18, 17.97% respectively. And the question is here, are we due for more, or are we looking for a bit of a bounce trade? So right now, I think it's important to recognize that I've started to pull profits out of this area, and I am looking for a bit of a potential bounce, but I haven't really taken any long exposure just yet in the near term. So I'm certainly just waiting to see what transpires here. Obviously, there is a really couple key levels that I'm looking at on nat gas chart, and I'm going to bring them to your attention right now. The really key levels that I'm looking at is this pivot low to really about that pivot high. You draw that little channel to and it connects through this previous resistance zone. I believe that there's a scenario there will be some support there. Now, if we take it one step further and we take another trend line parallel channel tool and we draw it through these pivot lows, really there's a big confluence area happening between here in September. But ultimately, if you pierce through this first support zone, then you're looking at this secondary support zone, in my opinion. So I haven't really decided yet. I think that if we were to have a flush into this 244, 245 zone, you would likely get a really big bounce off of that area intraday, in my opinion. Whether it's a swing trade level or not, that is yet to be seen and determined, because we still need a little bit more data to decide whether or not it's at a very key level. Now, obviously, if we look at some of the key moving averages, look at the daily 200 moving average on nat gas. That is approaching at 251. So previously, we've had some pretty sharp rejection there. Naturally, when we break through a technical level like the 200, you should see it defended by the bulls. It just so happens to line up with that first little downsloping trend channel that we discussed, going all the way back to 2018 pivot through your 2021 pivot, that impulse gap down breakdown bar over here, your little breakdown zone here, impulse breakdown candle over here, and now you should be retesting that area. So it might be an area of opportunity in the near term, but we'll see. We'll have to see how sharp of a bounce. If we throw up that fib retrace, take a look at that, 255, coming up right along with that daily 200. There could be a definite bounce there, but I am not taking the trade just yet. I'll obviously have to keep that between my members and I. Now, jumping over to a couple other things today, just in terms of general market observations. Today we saw the IGV, so cloud-based stocks, getting hit to the downside, and the importance about cloud-based stocks is they are the market leaders. Your names like Microsoft is heavily weighted in that cloud-based sector. Not every day you get to see Microsoft down in the session 3.38%. So definitely some sharp price action to the downside. And at this point in time, I do think that Microsoft's still a bit extended in this region, but naturally when Microsoft has these breakdowns, you have to be paying attention because it's still the largest company in the world and affects so many aspects of the market. You also saw some weakness in Adobe today, absolute sell side pressure in Adobe. Take a look at this cool little trend channel or support line on Adobe. So Adobe's obviously triggered some pretty bearish price action. And in full disclosure, I am accumulating a position here in Adobe. So I have to admit that I am long Adobe. So I might be biased, but you have to take your shots somewhere at these companies, right? You look at this weekly chart of this trend line connecting through all these little pivots. Adobe's now hitting this massive previous pivot high, your huge upsloping trend line in a very oversold condition. Adobe should get some sort of a daily chart bounce, very extremely oversold, especially with this breakdown today. I think that everyone's just throwing this one out with the bathwater because it was due to a sympathy trade in the overall space, but there will be a lot of support coming up in Adobe. Can it go lower? Absolutely. 420, 400's even a potential target on Adobe, but at some point you have to take a bit of a long trade. And there's certainly other names that are showing, I think, a little bit more weakness and have a little bit more correction to do. You look at MongoDB. MongoDB is another one that had this huge fall already from the high since it tried breaking out. And then basically it's gapping down here on earnings down to 229.87 in the after hours. So hopefully this analysis helps. But again, to sum things up back on nat gas, pay close attention to the equities around nat gas. And again, nat gas could be due for a bounce. And I say that because you look at some of the nat gas sensitive stocks, EQT, still showing some signs of accumulation here on this bullish price action. You know, you look at the weekly chart, still looking quite positive in my opinion, that type of pattern. And this was strong today when nat gas was getting hit and the equity markets were getting hit across the board. You look at AR, you know, ARs and Antero Resources is another one that ultimately on the technical side is still holding bullish structure, moving up again today on the session 2.5% when the market was weak, the S&P and the Qs. So obviously some of these names are certainly showing at least some relative strength, even when you're comparing some of their commodities that they're trading against. So I'm keeping my eye on a lot of these resource stocks again, because some of these have broken out of some pretty intense basin consolidation patterns. And a name like even CPK that's trying to hold this potential higher upsloping support area could be due for another move higher in the near term. So we'll have to watch these natural gas stocks and energy stocks in the near term. On that note, thank you all for tuning in. Please give this video a like down below. And don't forget to check out my TradingView page. Take care, everybody.